And now to make sense of all the protests spread across the U.S., we have Angela Fobbs joining us from Mainz in Germany. She's from Democrats Abroad and the Director of Strategic Initiatives. First off, good to have you this weekend again. Angela Fobbs, it's good to always have you join Arise America. Straight, I'm going to ask you a very personal question. Would you have been out protesting if you were in the United States for these anti-Trump protests?
100%. I would have been out protesting. In fact, I was out protesting this weekend in Frankfurt. We had several protests in Germany, in Frankfurt and Berlin, and there were protests all around the world, plus over 1,000 protests in the United States. In Washington, D.C., there were over almost 500,000 people there.
Okay, so that is interesting to note. So as an American, can you tell us, how does this, whole tariff thing and anti-Trump protests or the policies affect you as an American and the American people? Because one's wondering, why now? And the protests, what do Americans hope to achieve from this?
Well, what Americans want to achieve is to let our president and the Republican Party know that we don't support his tariffs. We don't support the dismantling of our government. We don't support mistreating our veterans or cutting off school lunches or demolishing our Department of Education or any of the things that he did. That was the whole point of the hands-off movement, is to let them know that to take your hands off of our government, because the government belongs to we the people.
So do you think the sudden rise and the spread of protests across the U.S. will put Democrats in good stead to end Trump's presidency after his first term? Would you say that is quite an ambitious move, especially with Trump's rumored planned third term plans?
Well, third term is unconstitutional. And if he finds some way that he thinks is legal to run for a third term, it's hard to say how the American people might react. But we are all working hard to make sure that Democrats come back into power as soon as possible in the midterms on next year.
So, Angela, can you talk to me about how much advantage the widespread protest gives the Democrats ahead of future elections?
Well, I think it gives people, it allows people to show their disapproval, and it also lets other people know that, because there's always people that aren't sure whether they agree or not, but it will let people know who haven't been out protesting or don't have the time to do it, that there are a lot of people that have the same feelings that they do, that what is happening is wrong, and that Donald Trump is destroying our country, and especially with the tariffs, that's not going to work out very well. The last time we had tariffs like this was at the start of the Depression in 1930. And it did not help. The only thing that helped fix the United States was the election of a Democratic president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
So then does this put the Democrats in the right footing, seeing that Trump has pushed on with these tariffs? That's one. On the other hand, I want you to explain how those tariffs, how does it affect you as an individual? How does it affect the American life, the day-to-day life of an American person?
Well, it affects the American people by raising the price of goods. People that have been considering making big ticket purchases, like buying a home or getting renovations, they will not do it. And that will cause a downturn in the economy overall, with people who own businesses that are selling goods and services. And the other terrible thing that's happening is that people who are either retired or close to retirement, they're watching their 401ks, their retirement savings, shrink because the stock market has gone down. The Dow dropped more than 2,000 points last week, and the S&P 500 lost 10% over the last 2 days of the market. So we're it's putting people in a position where they have less money or things are costing a lot more and they won't be able to afford it. This will affect everything from food to shoes to clothing to getting your car repaired or buying a new car or just about anything that you can think of. It's going to be a lot more expensive for the American people, and they're not going to accept that.
So, are these protests Democrat sponsored or just invited? I mean, when you see such protests, sometimes people assert that, in fact, that's one of the news online that's is actually sponsored by Democrats. How true is this?
That's completely false. The Hands Off movement is an independent organization, and people, it's basically an aggregator. They provided materials for people to be able to uh, start, make signs, and what do you do when you have a protest, and just the basics of how you hold a protest, and you can put up your event and people can find it. But be sure all these people were not Democrats, and it wasn't sponsored by Democrats necessarily. In the case of the protest, many of the protests that we held um, outside of the US, they were associated with Democrats abroad, but not all of them. There are 9 million Americans at least outside of the US, and many of them, like myself, we love our country and we only want the best for it. So we came out to protest for sure.
So, do you think the involvement also of Elon Musk in the Trump government is the trigger for the chaos or the protest that's ongoing in the US?
It is one of the triggers. The weekend before, 2 weeks ago, I guess there was the Take Down Tesla protest, and that brought out thousands of people around the world. And yes, it's not just in the United States, but outside the US, Tesla is everywhere. And do not appreciate an unelected person deciding how our government should work.
And I remember I did bring this to you the last time we had a conversation about you're taxing me for my goods. I'm not taxing you for your goods. So it's more like doing business. This is just the 50-50. It's more like a balance here. If I'm doing business with you, I expect that, it's going to be reciprocated. But it seems like some people say US has been the center of the world for quite some time. So it's only normal for Trump to, impose those tariffs. What do you think?
I think that Donald Trump doesn't know about economic issues and that he is a little bit confused about tariffs and how they work. A tariff is a tax on the person who buys the goods. It is not a tax on countries like he thinks it is. Um, we might have trade imbalances with people. That is possible. There are countries that maybe we buy from them more than they buy from us, but a lot of those countries are underdeveloped. There may be countries that we're closer to balance to, but that's not the actual issue. Whether we have a trade deficit or not will never be in balance because every country sells different things, and those goods are desired at different levels. In Mexico, we buy a lot of fruits and vegetables, and we have a lot of auto manufacturing and other industry that moved from the United States into Mexico, but the heads of those companies are still in the United States. So it's not as if we're not benefiting from these trade deals that we have. And in fact, the trade deal that we have with Mexico and Canada was altered by Trump in his first term. So if he doesn't like the deal, he made it.
So finally, before I let you go, Forbes, how does this affect, his relationship with other countries? Talk about the EU, talk about Africa, talk about, the world in general. How does this affect the relationship of the US with other nations and climes?
I think it could be detrimental to our relations to other countries because it's going to affect them too. They may not be able to sell as much to the US or buy as much from the US as they used to. I don't see how in the long run that this is going to be a positive move. And as I said, the last time something like this happened was in the 1930s with Herbert Hoover, and he was the main cause of the Depression. So I hope we don't end up like that, and I hope that the world economy can survive 3 more years or more, 4 more years of Donald Trump.
Let's see how the third term bid comes through as we kick in. Thank you so much, Angela Fobbs, for making our time to join us on Arise America.